What's up, guys? Welcome back for another EVE Online video. So in this one, I'm going to be kind of going over, I don't know, some advice, tips and tricks, whatever, when it comes to surviving in high sec. Things that you do just to, like, you know, make yourself more aware of your surroundings, things like that. One of the biggest is never to autopilot, right? Whenever you autopilot, you will come out like 12 to 15 kilometers from the gate, and it'll just slow burn towards it. It's a big red flag. I mean, people can see from a mile away. If they see anything come in on a gate that far out and just start to normal burn, they know that you're probably not even near the computer, right? So I end up just, whenever I'm jumping, I select the gate and I just jump manually, because that's going to take you immediately into the range at which you can just jump right through. By far, that is the most important thing to help better your chances of, you know, keeping your ship and just not getting hassled, right? And when you're in high sec and you're like new, you're probably not going to be flying anything that's really, you know, a target worthy. But I mean, you know, people will get bored, they see an easy target and they just want content, right? So we'll say that is, I guess, tip number one. The other one I will talk about is having local up, you know, where you can see it and things like that. And I usually recommend people who are going to be either mining, ratting, exploring, whatever, more or less for like mining and doing combat sites, kind of stick to, like, you know, normal systems of travel. Especially if you're a miner, you can just, you know, pick one home system and just like mine in that system. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to basically like case the joint, essentially. Back whenever I was in high sec and I did, you know, just mining, I just stayed in one system. That was basically just, I based myself out of that system. And so over the course of like 2 or 3 days after moving there, I was able to kind of see what the normal traffic was in local. And then, you know, also just looking at people's, you know, information and, you know, looking at their corporations and things like that, and knowing exactly who's actually also just living there. The other thing that can help you there too is like actually going to all the different citadels, all the player structures, seeing what corporations actually own those, and then cross-referencing that with who you normally see in local, and you'll be able to quickly tell kind of like who the regulars are. And then obviously you've heard, like, you know, if you see a spike in local, right, whether it be suspects or, you know, whatever, but if you see a big spike in local, either there's a fleet passing through your system or, you know, something's you know, up, which is another reason why you just want to keep, you know, D-scan, you know, readily available as well. And most of the time you're going to have it set at the max range, which is 14, which is 14.3, and then angle will be at 360. This gives you a good radius around you. And we'll talk a little bit more about DCN when I get into more, like, you know, survivability and stuff like that when it comes to like ratting and everything like that. The other thing I'll do too is, this is maybe not like a survival tip, but, you know, if I'm going to be planning on, I don't really try to use other corporations' structures, because you never know when they're going to, like, you know, edit their access list or whatever. So most of the time when I'm in high sec, I'm basing myself out of NPC structures, because, you know, I don't have you're not running a risk of actually like losing access to your assets and stuff. Now, if it's before compression came out as a miner, like, you had to like kind of find a system that had a refinery. You had to go in and refine or compress or refine or do whatever. But, you know, even now, like, you can compress on field with compression. So, you know, being in a system that has a active compression or refining is not necessarily a really important thing anymore. But yeah, just make sure you keep local up, you know, kind of like, you know, figure out who the regulars are, so you kind of know who's normal around the area, which will help you a lot too. And as a ratter, another thing you can do too, let's see what's in the system right now. So I'm in a Heron right now, but it goes for like data relic sites and everything too. So all right, so this Grease's hideaway is at 4.96 AU from me. And so what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to align to it, and I'm going to set my D-scan to 5, and I'm going to set the angle to 30, and then we hit scan. And what that's going to do, and we'll illustrate this a little bit better, we'll actually bring up this map here, and what I'll do is I'll turn on the cone And what you need to do when you're doing this is you need to go to first person view, because it's not based on the direction your ship is pointing, it's based on the direction your camera is pointed. So whenever I'm doing this, I'll just go to first person. And so what I'm doing now is I'm basically checking this combat signature, or this combat anomaly, and I'm seeing if anybody's there. And obviously, you know, we see a retriever, we see some hobgoblins, and then we see some deep core miner, NPC miners, which what we're doing is we're basically picking up what's on this asteroid belt. But really what we were looking for is we were looking for any like combat ships. If we were going to be ratting, we were looking for any combat ships. So we're not actually warping onto like a anomaly with somebody that's already in progress. And also just it helps you just, you know, it's kind of a courtesy, you know, but, you know, using that to like check gates as well too, right? So for instance, let's say you can't see my other overview just because I have it ultra wide, but we're going to align to this gate here, and it is 9.6 away. And so what I'm going to do is I'm bringing up that to about 10. And usually if I'm scanning a gate that far out, I'm going to go down to like 15, because I'm going to get everything in between, right? So, you know, we can kind of see what's going on here. And that's more importantly for like, if you're just gating in general, especially in nullsec, just overall. It's not even just a high sec thing, but like if you're really trying to like make sure there's nobody on the gate, just, you know, adjusting your angles and your range are going to help you quite a bit. And as far as that, you know, kind of those are the big major things when it comes to like ratting. You just want to kind of like not step on anybody too much. The other trick is we're going to go to an asteroid belt, and I'm just going to go over some like, you know, basic. I mean, most of the time, most people are going to be mining when it comes to being in a high sec as like a filler job and things like that. And there's some strategies actually to kind of help you better your chances of, well, actually the number one thing I'll say if you're mining in high sec is when you log in and get ready to mine every single day, you should 100% go to encounters in the agency and check if there's a pirate stronghold in your system. If there is, do not mine, because there'll be rat mining fleets out and it'll just cause you problems. But so normally, you know, just like with anything like, you know, nullsec or whatever, you never want to like warp or work out of 0, because anybody that comes here, if they all warp 0 to this, they're going to come right here. In terms of just like mining, what you should do is I usually just try to like mine on the outside of the arc. And so if I'm in an orca, and I'll come out here in like a fast ship, like a shuttle or something, and I'll like bookmark these belts. That's what I used to do. Just bookmark the belts and bookmark spots that I just had or like to mine from. So for instance, if I was in like an orca and I had like a mining fleet with me, I would, let's say like I'm boosting as well. So let's say I have like 20, 30K range, right? I don't really care about the corners of the arc here, because if I can get myself about 30 or, you know, 15, I can get most of this belt from out here. Okay, so that's the first step, is like being on the outside of the arc and try to be as far away from the rocks as possible. That compensates for your mining range here. The other thing I'll say is be up or above, or be above or below the actual belt itself by a little bit, because that's all going to depend on like where you're. So that's about good right there. And what that means is like depending on what station you're going to end up aligning to, you know, essentially if you need to like warp out or whatever, you won't be running into rocks. So like right here we're good, but like if there's a station basically on that side and we were dead in line with all the rocks, we'd be moving through. And if you bounce, if you try to like go warp through these rocks, you're going to bounce. It's going to slow down your warp, all kinds of stuff. So that's one of the biggest survival things too, because most of the time when gankers come in, they're not going to have pre-nabbed it. And so what they're going to do is they're going to do exactly what I showed you with D-scan. They're going to like point themselves at every single belt. They're going to adjust their angle. They're going to adjust their range, and they're going to check every belt, and they're going to see exactly, you know, what's where. And if they see somebody on a belt, then they're going to warp 0 and they're going to pull out here. Chances are they'll still catch you just because they're being fast ships, and they'll have some range on you too. But, you know, give them as much of obstacle as possible. I mean, you're not literally sitting at 0 or on the inside of the arc either. So be outside and above is the biggest trick. So that, and check for pirate strongholds. That's the really big thing. And then also, if there's a spike here, right? If you have a spike in local, just be ready to go back to your station and, do what you gotta do and everything. And even if and the other big trick is like, especially for miners, and also for ratting, I guess too, is like, you want to be away from like major market hubs, and also just trade routes, right? So like this system right here is like 7 jumps from Jita, which is pretty good. Like I usually try to stay like 7 to like 10 jumps away from Jita. It gets me kind of like out in the boonies, so to speak. So you don't have a lot of fleet travel going from like trade hub to trade hub and everything. So it does make it a little inconvenient when you have to go sell stuff and sell assets and sell compressed ore, because you have to travel a little bit, but you get less day-to-day traffic through. And when it comes to like ratting as well, the further you are from like trade hubs, like the less competition you're going to technically have for your rat sites, or even if you're exploring, less competition, because most of the time people are going to be in and around market hubs doing their missions, doing a lot of the combat sites or combat anomalies that are around Jita or around a market hub, so they can quickly turn around their loot and things like that. So one of the best things I can offer for advice on that is just try to be a decent amount of distance from any trade hub and everything. And it might take you a little while if you're setting up in for mining or for ratting or for exploration in high sec. You might take you a few days to find a decent system, and then a couple more days to kind of like case it out and see what kind of traffic goes through there and things like that. But really, it's all about like, and this goes for like null too, right? It's all about just knowing your neighborhood, kind of knowing who the normals are, and the traffic and just the routine, right? The biggest thing about the high sec and survivability is just knowing your environment, knowing the mechanics, and then just knowing kind of like who the regulars are, right? You building just dossiers of different corporations and things like that. But that's really it. I mean, like, if a gang fleet comes in and you're mining, and I think I've been in a situation once where we've had like catalysts come in when we were with orcas and hulks. They didn't end up actually getting any kills because we were drag mining and everything. And I have a video over drag mining. It works with both the Oracle and with the orca. But I mean, if you fit your orca correctly, then Concord will take care of most of the work for you. But another trick you can do too is if you're actually running hulks and stuff like that, you just have them close enough to your orca. If like a gang fleet comes in, just right click on your orca and board, and just store all your mining barges or your exhumers in the orca, and then just pot off your alts if that's the case. So you kind of have to be on your toes, but like that's the thing is like keep an eye on DScan, keep an eye on local. You'll see it coming. You'll see it coming a mile away. If you see like a spike in local and then you hit like DScan and you see a bunch of catalysts on there, then yeah, it's probably a gang fleet. That's usually not a roam fleet. That's usually like, hey, we're gonna go find a miner on DScan and we're just gonna like suicide gank, right? That's usually how that goes. As far as exploration goes, and same for combat sites, just because you descan it, you don't see anybody there, doesn't mean there's like not a cloaky person there. A lot of ships that can fit cloak, aren't necessarily suicide gankers usually, just because they're a little bit more blitzy when it comes to it, but you never know. But I mean, if you warp onto a combat site, you see wrecks or something, or it gets like partially done or whatever, then yeah, I'd probably just find another one, because that's another thing that they can do is they can kill one rat on the combat site, then they can bookmark it and then come back, or just save a spot in space or whatever. That's the other thing too, is another thing for survival, not so much for like combat sites or combat anomalies, but especially when you're mining, and this goes for like nullsec as well, to clean up your wrecks. Because if somebody comes in the system and even if you dock up and everything, and I've seen this happen to people before, if you dock up, they'll basically figure out where the most recent wrecks are. They're like, where all these wrecks are that rats have died, and they'll bookmark there, and then they'll leave or log off or whatever. And then when you go back to doing your normal like mining thing, they'll just log back in or jump back in the system and just come immediately where those wrecks were, because they assume that you're going to go back to where you were mining or back where you were ratting. So even as miners, investing in like salvage drones for like the orca is not a bad idea. Just kind of help keep things cleaned up. But my usual advice for stuff like that is like, if I'm running a combat anomaly and I have somebody like, you know, especially in high sec, if I have a gang fleet come in, you know, and there's not a whole lot of, like right now this local is pretty sparse, but if they come in, I'm just gonna assume that they're gonna bookmark my Rex, and then I'm just gonna like go to another anomaly when everything clears out, even more so for null, right? Because if you're the only one operating in a null system, you know, none of your people are online or whatever the case may be, then there's probably not a whole lot of Rex out there, so the ones they're gonna find are yours. So I just usually burn those locations. So like, you know, if that was that hideaway and they, you know, came in and I had to get off of there, I would just right click and just ignore that result, and then go run some other stuff or whatever. But surviving in high sec is not that big of a deal. I think, you know, a lot of the issues come from when people are just learning the mechanics. You know, autopiloting is one of the biggest, you know, one of the biggest issues, where that's where a lot of people lose their ships, or, you know, people AFKing. You know, even when you're mining is, you know, still kind of a semi AFK thing, but being at your computer and running dscan, just kind of keep an eye on everything, you know, doesn't hurt and stuff like that. But there are things you can do, and there are going to be situations that, you know, they're going to bring, if an orca kill fleet comes in, they're going to bring enough to make sure you go down. So there's not really much you can do. If you're dragging, you can actually get off. So if you're doing like drag mining, which would essentially be like setting up a nav. Let's look at this belt real quick. So instead of being like out here, if you're just gonna like siege mine, right, I would probably, let's say your mining boost range is like 30, so you'd set like a nav right here, and let's say over there somewhere is the station you're aligning to, or maybe like another bookmark. And so essentially the orca is going to like travel from this point slowly all the way across the belt, and all of your mining barges and exhumers are going to follow the orca and just mine everything that they can while they go. That way, if anything comes in, if a big orca kill squad comes in, then all you have to do is basically just warp, you know, warp fleet to your little nav and do what you got to do. And that allows you to just get off grid like super quick, and that really helps get rid of the danger of getting your orca popped. But most of the time you can, you know, fit your orca pretty decently and everything like that. But I know there's a lot of concern about, you know, survival and stuff like that, and like high sec is probably like the second to most dangerous place in the game. I think the most dangerous place probably is, you know, low sec. I mean, it's the Wild West out there. And then, you know, high sec is just, you know, and I've said it to people all the time, it's like the most dangerous thing about high sec is there's so many unknowns. I mean, you look at local, you don't know who anybody is, you don't know what they're trying to do, right? And that's what I like about null sec is, you know, if they're not blue, then, I mean, AWOXing happens, but like usually if somebody comes into the system and they're don't have any standings or anything like that, you know they're not going to be friends, you know. So it's like the rules are a lot clearer and the intentions are a lot clearer in null sec, which is what makes it safer than high sec. So not to ramble on too long, hopefully I covered a little bit of stuff to help you guys out, but a lot of it is just, you know, being situationally aware. I mean, like for me, when I started playing, I didn't have a clue about, you know, D-scan. I didn't even know it was a thing. I mean, because like, you know, when you start playing, at least back then, it wasn't even on the screen. You know, the probe scanner wasn't even on the screen. Like you had local chat, you know, whatever. So, you know, it's hidden down here in these buttons, and you had to like separate it from the map and do all the crazy stuff. But, you know, knowing that D-scan is a thing and the probe launcher and all that stuff, it's like the more you know, right? The more you know. And I think I just launched probes, but yeah. Anyway, I don't want this video to go too long. Hopefully what I covered is, you know, helps you guys out a little bit. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.